Hello and welcome back to Safety for Cruisers. My name is Eitan, and today we're going to be rounding out our three-part series of the different types of emergencies at sea with man overboard. So, man overboard is a very scary situation if it happens in real life, and it's one that unfortunately most boaters are woefully unprepared to deal with. Unless you are a professional race team that is doing recovery exercises on a regular basis, you are more than likely not going to have had more than a few minutes of training, maybe if you're lucky, a page or two in your captain's training on recovery procedures, and probably won't have thought too much about it. So we're going to try to give you some good information on how to get somebody back on board and some things to consider when doing so. So, kind of starting with the bigger boat commercial side of things, there's three turns. There's the Williamson, the Anderson, and there's another one, but that requires timing and planning and mapping things, so we're not even going to go into that. We're just going to talk about the Williamson here on the left and the Anderson on the right. This is off of a marine site, nice little site with some good diagrams. So these are powerboat. These are big, tankers. These are the maneuvers that the commercial vessels train on, and the idea is to get the boat back to the casualty as soon as possible. Well, hopefully not casualty, victim. So with the Williamson, it's pretty simple. Whichever side the victim goes over, and this is going to be true for all these turns and for anything else going forward. If you have a man overboard, you're always going to turn in the direction of the man overboard. I guess there are some exceptions with sailing, depending on what your point of sail is, but for the most part, you're going to turn in the direction of the casualty. The reason for that is that if you've got your motor running, or if you're on a bigger boat that you cannot, you can't stop the motor in time, even if you know about it, you're going, by turning in the direction of the casualty, you can see here, person falls off to starboard, you're going to go hard over to starboard, and the reason for that is that you're going to kick your stern out away from that person. You've got Bernoulli's principle sucking them towards the boat. You want to get those wheels, get those propellers away from them as much as possible. So that's why in both of these you see the person goes over and you're going to go hard over in the same direction that they came off. The Williamson is pretty simple. You're going to go hard over to that direction until you deviate 60 degrees. And then you're going to go hard over the opposite direction, and you're going to maintain that rudder angle until you are on a reciprocal heading from the point at which the victim fell overboard. The Anderson is a little bit different. You're going to crank over to 250, so basically hard over, and then you're just going to go 250 degrees off of your initial course, and you're going to initiate your recovery that way. So, like I said, those are kind of the commercial maneuvers, and it's not that they aren't necessarily applicable for smaller vessels, because if you're on any powerboat, these are going to be your two fastest ways to initiate your recovery. But we're going to be talking more about sail, and we're going to be talking about how much more that complicates things. So, for sailboats, obviously your issue is that you're a lot less maneuverable under sail. And on top of that, if you are carrying a lot of sail, then you now have a lot more canvas to deal with, and a lot more things to maneuver when you're trying to facilitate a recovery. So the sequence that goes into any man overboard drill, doesn't matter if it's power, sail, tanker, dinghy, whatever it is the first person that sees the man overboard is going to make the notification. So you're going to yell, scream, man overboard, and in an ideal world, you are now the lookout. So you saw the person go overboard. You are now the person that your sole job is to make that notification and now keep eyes on that person. There's a lot of good videos out there showing just how easy it is to lose sight of somebody without a PFD on in even mild to moderately calm seas. It doesn't take much. So you see that person go over, you are going to walk around and follow them with your arm and with your eyes, and you're going to keep them in sight at all costs. That is ideally what your sole job is going to be. That being said, there are times where you're not going to be able to do that, which leads us into our second priority. Second and third kind of should go together. As soon as everybody hears man overboard, it's all hands on deck, everyone immediately up. And if possible, you want to do two things pretty much simultaneously. You want to get a flotation device, some kind of marker to that person in the water, and you want to start facilitating the recovery on board. So what that would look like is essentially first person yells man overboard, and I do apologize for the old sexist term, but we just use man overboard for everybody, so hopefully that'll be palatable for the audience. First person is going to yell and scream man overboard. The second and third, however many other people up on deck, one person is going to deploy your throwable device. So we have, you saw in our walk around, we have a horseshoe buoy with a strobe on the port side midships. We have a throwable Type 4 on the back. The life sling we're not going to deploy, and the reason for that is the life sling is tethered to the vessel. That is a recovery device. If you toss it off the back, it's just going to get dragged behind the boat, which is fine. You do that eventually, but first you just want to get something to that person so that they have additional flotation, whether or not they're wearing a PFD. And the other thing is that hopefully it has a strobe on it, a light if it's at night. If it's in the daytime, there's a lot of vessels that will have a smoke canister attached to their throwable and their light, so that goes over the side, and now you have a daytime signal and a nighttime signal. So you get that over for both visual identification as well as increased buoyancy for your victim. So that action is going to simultaneously occur along with getting the vessel ready for the recovery. So at that point, your helm, whoever is at the helm, is going to initiate the recovery in the best way that they deem possible. If you're just motoring along and you've got nothing, then maybe you just do one of those turns that you saw. If you're under sail, then you've got some more complication. The first thing that I always recommend doing is, if it's not on, turn your motor on, because unless you are in decently windy conditions, you can usually motor up against the wind, the current, whatever it is. There are obviously exceptions to this, but in a lot of conditions, you can motor up against, regardless of what canvas you have. You can at least start to get your vessel back in the direction of your casualty. So we're not going to be talking about the specific maneuvers that sailboats use as much in terms of, there's the heave to options, there's the figure eight options, just depends on what point of sail you're on. We're going to be talking about more global considerations. So the idea is that you want to be as maneuverable as possible. So your engine is going to be your chi, so obviously you're going to use that. The hardest point to recover a casualty from is a run or a broad reach. Beam to close is actually not that bad. You do a figure eight, you do modify the maneuver however you need to, and you can usually get back to somebody potentially even without dropping sail and without using your engine. That being said, I always recommend turning your engine on and getting yourself into the most maneuverable position possible. So you want to get yourself pointing back up towards your man overboard. You want to be going in that right direction. You want to stop increasing the distance between you and the person who fell off. So as you're doing that, you can start dropping canvas, you can start furling things in, you can start getting the boat more cleaned up and ready to go. If you're on a beam reach or a close haul, and you can either go straight to a heave to and drift down. That's one thing. You can sail a pattern that brings you back up to that person. That can be another good option. But I always recommend you get the motor on so that it expedites your ability to get back to that person in the water. Once you have yourself in a more manageable situation, so whether that's sail in or you're just simply tacked over and you're coming back, or you heave to and you're drifting down, now you have to start thinking about the person in the water and what their status is. So hopefully it's the conditions allow you to have comms with that person, whether that's verbal or you have they fell overboard with a radio if they're a watchstander. And they can talk to you. You know that they're okay. They can give you their status, and you can start considering what you're going to do to get them back on board. A lot of sailboats, a lot of vessels up to, I mean, even the bigger yachts up, north of 100 feet, they've got a low transom. They've got a low swim deck. It's not till you get up to really big stuff where you start having enough freeboard that it's a legitimate problem to actually access your man overboard. And at that point, usually the vessels are required to have lifeboats that can be deployed while underway. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a vessel that we assume has a close enough freeboard, low enough freeboard that you can access them, or a nice transom that you can get up to them. So you have two considerations. You have one, how to safely maneuver the vessel around to your casualty, and two, how are they going to get back on board. So the first one is how to maneuver the boat safely to them. Ideally, you do not want to drift your boat down on top of them. This is one of the problems I have with the heave to method, is you are doing exactly that. You're drifting. Obviously, you can tack or jibe out of a heave to, and you can change your course, but you've got pretty limited maneuverability. So you don't want to drift your boat down on top of your person in the water, because even if they're conscious, if it's windy enough that you're really carrying some speed, you've now got, whether it's a 30-foot boat or a 130-foot boat, drifting on top of you. Obviously, if it's a 130-foot boat, you could easily kill that person by dragging them under the boat and them getting caught on something. So you want to avoid doing that. You want to come up to the casualty. In an ideal world, you want to be to leeward of them, and then you want to maneuver. Say, most often it's going to be the transom of your boat. You want to maneuver the transom of your boat so that it is in line and it comes up to them. So that's going to be the safest place to recover, and that's going to mitigate the hazard of them going under the boat and potentially causing more harm than was already done. So once you maneuver your boat to wherever you need to get the person back on board, and as you're doing that, you need to be considering what the person's status is. Say they're conscious, they're doing okay, they just fell over. I've got a fun video of an impromptu man overboard drill. Maybe we'll include that in this, that we did on Sierra Wind. And I was obviously okay. So one of those issues was taken care of. They knew they didn't have to worry about getting me up into the boat. They just needed to get me back on. So the easiest way to do that is going to be with a recovery device. So whether that is a ring buoy with a throw bag attached that you keep on one. You keep the end of the throw bag with you, and you can pull them into the boat after you toss that to them. Or if it's a life sling that you can deploy off the back, and the captain or helmsman can maneuver the vessel so that the line intercepts them, or the actual float intercepts them, and then they can be pulled aboard that way. You just want to get a flotation device with a line to that person so that you can assist them coming aboard. Yes, they could hopefully just swim to you, but you want to be prepared, if nothing else, to assist them in that effort. Say they have a minor injury that they can still pull themselves in with, or at least hold on to a line. That's a lot better than being 10 feet away from somebody before you find out that one of their arms is busted and they can't swim, and now you're scrambling to get your line attached and you're doing all this. So this is all things that you want to plan out way in advance, have preset, and then get ready once you have that man overboard happen. That's kind of your best case scenario. Your person goes over, they trip, fell, they're fine, and you can throw them a line. The worst case scenario is going to be if they're unconscious. If they are unconscious wearing a PFD, there's a chance that you might be able to facilitate a full recovery for this person, and if they didn't inhale any water, then could end up with a good outcome. If they're not wearing a PFD and they get knocked unconscious, unfortunately, the prospects are pretty grim for them. That being said, you always plan for the best. So whether or not they're wearing a PFD, you want to have a plan for getting an unconscious person back onto your boat. And you want to not only have a plan, you want to actually drill this. And this is honestly one of the most difficult things that you can do. A huge advantage to wearing a PFD with leg straps is that you just took care of a huge amount of work for your crew if they're going to be recovering you. If you're wearing a PFD with leg straps, all you have to do is maneuver the vessel so that they're close, deploy a rescue swimmer who's wearing a PFD as well with a line. They're going to connect it to you, and then using, whether it's a block and tackle, whether it's a manual haul, whatever it's going to be to get you onto that transom over the beam of the boat, whatever the call is made, a single shackle or a single carabiner clipped onto the D-ring or the 2 D-rings on your PFD has now just taken care of an immense amount of work. If the person is either not wearing a PFD with a lifting strap or not wearing a PFD at all, you now have a big problem. Not only is this person unconscious, but you now have to get them on the boat. Rescue diver training does a great job in going into detail on how to maneuver unconscious people in the water and how to keep their airway open and how to maneuver them safely if they have different injuries. So if you're a diver, I would highly recommend taking the rescue diver course. Obviously, there's a lot of training you can do in swiftwater and advanced water rescue classes that can go into this, but essentially you want to have the person on their back, and you want to be maneuvering them towards the vessel. Usually head first is going to be the easiest way to do it. And if you have an unconscious person in the water and they're not wearing a PFD, you're going to need, ideally 2 or 3 trained professionals to get that person out. If you find yourself in this situation and it's just you just have to do the best you can. But basically, you need to rig up some kind of lift to get this person out of the water. This could potentially be a 10 or 12 foot piece of tubular webbing that's tied in a loop that you can form a cross between their legs, form a cross around their torso, and lift them up that way. You could try to maneuver them into a life sling or some other rescue device and then manually hold their arms in so it doesn't slip over their head. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, and it really just comes down to what you have on board, your skill and competence in terms of knot tying and improvising harnesses, and the sea state, obviously. So you need to get something rigged up to that casualty that will allow you to then get them up. And if you're just at anchor and you guys are bored, get the whole crew in on this. See what you can do with a full crew. Have one person just kind of tread water, or float on their back next to the boat, and have everyone else try to facilitate a recovery. It's incredibly challenging, even in a dead calm anchorage. So really good thing to try to work out, and a really good skill set to practice. Normally a block and tackle, once you have that person rigged up into a harness of some sort, normally block and tackle is going to be the easiest way to get that person back over. If you're on a catch rig, great, you got 2 booms, one can stabilize, one can lift. If you're on a sloop or cutter, then you're down to your single boom. Some people get creative and rig it up off davits. There's a lot of different ways, but the idea is you need to get this person back on board as safely and as quickly as possible. And if you have an unconscious person in the water, I would skip or not skip. I would, if I was the captain, as my crew is facilitating this recovery, I would already be getting resources coming. So I would already be making a mayday. Potentially, if you're out far enough, I would even consider activating an EPIRB, just due to the fact that the odds are not good. The amount of situations that a person is going to be okay to continue, say, transoceanic passage after being knocked out and in the water without a PFD is very, very slim. So even if they do somehow wake up and maybe they're even neurologically intact, they can talk, I would still probably get that person medevaced. I would not want them on board for another week, 2, however long it is until you get to your next destination. So as this is happening, you kind of need to triage the situation and get resources rolling appropriately. Other considerations to kind of include in this is equipment. There's a lot of really cool stuff on the market for. A lot of it is rescue apparatus. So it could be a hasty harness by CMC. It could be a half back litter that's manufactured for confined space rescue. There's a lot of really cool devices out there, and if you're really serious about safety and you have the budget and you have the space on board, then I would strongly consider outfitting your boat for this eventuality. It's a low frequency, high risk, like a lot of the things that we talk about. So yeah, it's something that you might not ever use. You hope you don't ever use it, but if you have that equipment on board, at least there is at least there's a prayer for that person. If you don't, then it's just that much less likely to have a positive outcome. Last thing to talk about before we close this out is what the man overboard recovery procedures need to be doing kind of in your head as you are moving about your day-to-day existence on board. If you are, and we touched on this in a few other videos, if you are blasting downwind in 20-foot seas and you're like, I got a heavy kite, I'm gonna keep this up even though the winds are 15 knots, and you're gonna have a full main on that. Like, okay, I mean, yeah, if you're doing a transpac and you're racing, then go for it. But if you're a cruiser and you don't have a time crunch, you don't have a destination, you should be thinking at any point in your passage, what happens if somebody goes overboard right now? And if the answer makes you go, eeh, like, maybe you should try to mitigate that hazard. So maybe you douse the kite. Maybe you go to your Genoa. Spinnakers are, if you fly them, you should appreciate how much of a nightmare they are to deal with in bad situations. It's just like if you think you should reef, you should already be reefed. If you're thinking, man, I don't know if I should have the kite up right now, I should probably take it down. The same thing, just like I said, goes with reefing. If you're flying along full canvas and you're thinking, geez, if somebody went over right now, it's going to take me 5-6 minutes to, just get my canvas in order before I can even think about facilitating a recovery, then if you're being a responsible captain, you're going to go ahead and douse one of your sails. You're going to reef down, because having that amount of time and that amount of work that goes into just getting your boat into a safe setup is not particularly responsible. And the last thing to kind of touch on is markers. So this is something that you should, it's kind of a whole separate video really, we might do this someday, is when the person goes over, we talked about the responsibilities. Person's going to keep their eyes on it, get a point. Another person's going to get that float with a visual marker deployed. Whoever's at the helm, and there should obviously always be somebody at the helm 24/7, whoever's at the helm should be familiar with the activation and use of your man overboard functions. So we've got the BNG set up. It's a fully networked system, and it's just got the most beautiful man overboard setup. I love it. You hit the man overboard button, and it takes your entire chart plotter, it takes all of your displays, your auxiliary displays you have wired up, and it says, this is where the person is, this is where you are, this is the course you need to get back to it, this is how long it's going to take, this is the distance, this is the time. It sets everything up for you to succeed. So if the first time that you look at your man overboard displays when you have a man overboard, you might spend 5 to who knows how long minutes trying to figure out what all these lines and numbers mean. And that could easily be the difference when your man overboard being a recoverable rescue or being a body recovery. So you want to really familiarize yourself with the electronics with the setup you have. If you have man overboard beacons, you want to familiarize yourself with how far they have to be off the boat before they will actually turn on and activate. You want to familiarize yourself if you have an AIS beacon or a DSC. How is it best to get those coordinates from your radio, say it goes there, to your chart plotter? What's your plan if the AIS doesn't work but the DSC does work? You want to work through all of the potential technological kinks, and you want to have plans for that ahead of time. So that's kind of our man overboard brief overview. If you want to look at the actual strategies for recovering somebody under sail, definitely recommend that you look for a local sailing school and do work with that. Biggest thing I can recommend for all this is drills. Drill. Toss a coconut over the side of your boat. One that I hope you're okay losing, and you'll see just how hard it is to see somebody whose head is the only thing that's visible. Throw a PFD over, try to recover that PFD. Time yourself, try to get that time down. Any drill you do is potentially increasing the survivability of any one that goes over the side of your boat.